All right. So, thank you guys for taking out some time to talk to me. I guess to start, could you guys just introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you want to go, Matt, first?
Yeah, sure. So, hey, I'm Joonatan or Joonatan, whichever way you want to pronounce it, the Finnish or the easy way. And I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Phaver. Before starting Phaver with Tomi, I was on the Web2 advertising dark side for almost a decade, so working at Google and then for a Facebook marketing company and kind of seeing how the sausage is made in the Web2 world and always feeling very uneasy about it. So eventually decided we need to do something about it and build something of our own.
Nice. And yeah, I'm Tomi, co-founder and CFO. My kind of background is starting from a finance role, then becoming a Web2 tech guy in a big e-commerce company, and then now eventually in Web3 slash crypto. So worked at Goldman, and then in a VC fund, and then in this big e-commerce company. Actually was based out of Pakistan as well as the final location, and had to prevent discount code cheating, etc. And I think now I'm facing or what the crypto industry is facing with Sibyl is very similar challenges on the consumer side. But yeah, taking care of finance aspects. Obviously, we work on all the business side things, hustling together with Joonatan and the rest of the team.
Very nice. Great. Yeah, I love that the description, Joonatan of being on the dark side. That's awesome. And it looks like Tomi, maybe you were on the dark side a little bit too.
Yeah, Tomi's Goldman side is also pretty bad.
Yeah, Goldman typically has a connotation to the dark side too. So that's both happening.
Cool. Well, so now you guys are working together at this company, Phaver. Could you guys just start simply with what is Phaver and what are you guys trying to do with it?
Yeah, I think the one sentence tagline we're trying to use is Phaver is the gateway to Web3 social. And what that means in the background is that right now, obviously, most of blockchain technology is extremely hard to use, unintuitive, and definitely not mainstream friendly. At the same time, Web3, with the promise of ownership and kind of decentralizing the power of the social giants, actually has a huge promise behind it. So our mission is to figure out how do we make that a mainstream reality. And from the gateway perspective, that means that we're focusing on integrating all of the main social graphs of Web3. So that's Lens and Farcaster and Mocha and CyberConnect, who have all been core partners of ours. And then we also allow people to mint all of those profiles for free inside Phaver. Soon also with a managed wallet creation to make it even more mainstream friendly. But kind of step one is onboard people in an easy enough way where I actually use my grandmother as the guinea pig. Whenever she's able to use a feature without my help, I know we're building it in the right manner. Still, quite a few things require my help, but she's a very active Phaver user and actually an influencer on our platform, sharing my baby pictures, which apparently have an audience. But that's kind of step one is getting people in. Step two is figuring out how to scale that into something that is not a Ponzi scheme that kind of goes up and then comes down very quickly like most of SocialFi attempts so far. And at the same time has to be genuinely more fun than being on Twitter or X, or otherwise people will just remain on their Web2 apps.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot. And I like that you're using a relative as a kind of a gut check with what you guys are doing. I know personally with my mother, I've asked her to use different wallets to try to buy and then send me some crypto. And thus far, without my intervention, it's been a massive loss. Yeah, at least on the wallet front, for just traditional buying and transferring of crypto, it seems like there's a lot of work to be done still.
Yeah, I was very happy that my grandma doesn't know how to use her wallet, so we're keeping her safe from getting rugged.
Exactly, yeah. All right. Just a side question, because you mentioned Lens, Farcaster, Mocha, and some of these other Web3 social graphs. Are there any reservations from them that you guys are kind of giving access to all of them, or is there more like a friendly competition feeling amongst these guys?
Yeah, I think, of course, kind of, especially Lens and Farcaster are kind of going very much head to head on kind of who takes sort of the peak position, but how we view things. And there's pretty much, I think, an agreement with their founders as well that right now, like, there's no point in fighting for the slices of the cupcake. We first need to grow it into a pie. So if Lens and Farcaster both have 500,000 users, that's not really a relevant amount of audience for like any benchmark of social media. So right now, kind of trying to fight about market shares is not going to help anyone, but rather like every app out there who's able to onboard people and retain people in Web3 is actually helping kind of the overall mission, because once you're on Farcaster, it's easier for you to be on Lens as well, and the other way around. And with Phaver, kind of our super graph ensures that it's not a zero-sum game. So if we have active Web3 creators, they will be kind of sustaining both protocols. And then it's up to the protocols to figure out who is going to be kind of long-term the one who's around, or whether there's going to be multiple protocols that kind of create their own audiences and their own focus.
Very cool. Yeah, I like that. And yeah, so you mentioned how relatively small the pie is for Web3 socials compared to your incumbent traditional Web2 social graphs like Facebook and Twitter, etc. So talking about those guys, can you tell me what those traditional Web2 platforms have gotten right so far and what they've gotten wrong?
Yeah, I think it depends if you consider that from a financial or moral background, but I think it's very obvious that the Web2 apps have nailed engagement and the amount of time that people are spending on the applications, how to feed you endless hours of interesting enough content that keeps you around and kind of creates that experience that brings people back over and over again. Whether that's financially, that's definitely a good thing. Whether it's what the world needs or actually the opposite, that's another very different discussion. But I think they've been able to kind of build that retention mechanism and user experience that really brings people back and also scales in a very viral manner. So I think none of the Web3 apps have yet kind of reached kind of either of those benchmarks. Also for Phaver, like there's already a lot of quality content on Phaver, but we don't necessarily have kind of competitive algos to surface as good of a feed experience as, let's say, Instagram does for a user, because they have like a 10-year head start on doing that, and a lot of professional creators, etc. And kind of also the user experience overall is obviously still smoother on that side. But I think like there's a lot of other things that Web3 can bring to the table that Web2 is either unable or unwilling to do.
Yeah. I can maybe throw in just a couple. I'm now in ETHCC in Brussels, and there was yesterday a Lens event and the day before a Farcaster meetup. I think what is differentiated versus the Web2 social media is kind of this ownership aspect, where you feel like, they're actually building a community together. I was just speaking with our creator program members, and, they genuinely feel that, they have ownership and stake in it. I think this probably hasn't happened, or it has been a smaller niche in the Web2 social giants are obviously kind of key part of our business model and value proposition as well. So I think that is the aspect that kind of this is highlighted in real life events as well. And I think we're just building up quite nicely. So it's almost similar as, Bitcoin has been always like a belief system, and, you're part of that internet community, and it's more than just, kind of having part of your assets or money in it. So I think the same thing is kind of starting to surface also on the Web3 side, which I think is a very cool thing that I think I've witnessed it here in ETHCC now stronger than in many other of the previous events.
Very, very cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. The ownership aspect of Web3, not just in social, is one of the main differentiating factors, maybe the main differentiating factor. Um, I'm curious about something that you guys mentioned in terms of, kind of how Web2 social has kind of a moral component in terms of have they done like good ultimately, right? They in the past, like I would say 5 years or so, they've been getting a lot of flack, and people are coming to realize that perhaps these Web2 companies have been a net negative than a positive. I was wondering if you guys have thought about this more and thought about how you guys are going to try to differentiate yourself or avoid this kind of moral quandary.
Yeah, I think there's like in the end, it's all about sort of the absolute power and control that in the end, kind of even Google ended up burying their "Don't be evil" slogan eventually. And that where I think like Chris Dixon has put it very well with "Can't be evil is much better than don't be evil." And that's kind of what a lot of the decentralization is building into the system. So for Phaver, our step one was that we found a partner, Lens Protocol, to kind of give us accountability. So from the get-go, people have been able to back up everything that they do on Phaver, so their follows and their posts and everything else, their entire social graph, onto Lens where it's beyond our reach. So that means that no matter how big and powerful Phaver may become, we are never the owners of the user's social graphs. And that means that like we can't be evil in the sense that if we don't serve our community, the community can just essentially fork us and use another Lens application or nowadays a Farcaster application as well. And this is kind of like, it's impossible to just decide on day one that we're building something for good. You can see OpenAI started as an kind of open source nonprofit, and now suddenly it's primarily funded by Microsoft and saying that they're turning into a for-profit. And because that is not a decentralized setup, then that's kind of their prerogative. And when you realize that there's enough money to be made, people end up making very different choices than what they originally intended. And that's, I think, what's the very vital part of Web3 social is that in order for it to actually be Web3 social, it has to be decentralized ownership where the same party cannot control every single part of the setup. And I think kind of morally, maybe there's obviously a lot of different discussions around different angles, but the most kind of, I think the biggest risk of the current system is that there's essentially a couple of companies, so with Meta and X and TikTok, who control pretty much the entire global news narrative. There's a few people who are able to decide how the algorithms are tweaked, whether it's going to be a Democrat or Republican-leaning algorithm, whether it's going to be educational or whether it's going to be fueling hate or anything else for that matter. And even if any of those companies wouldn't be using it to their advantage, they hold the keys for doing so. And that means that we are essentially kind of risking true democracy by giving the power to just a few individuals who can decide whether good news or bad news, right wing, left wing, whatever is going to be amplified. That's, of course, now the discussion in the US Congress around TikTok as well, where people are starting to wake up to wait, who is actually funneling news to our youth, and what are those news, and are they the ones that you would be seeing from a neutral algorithm? So that's kind of where, as long as there's a decentralized graph in the background, it means that nobody will be able to own the only algorithm that serves that content. Because then if Phaver decides to go ultra left wing or ultra right wing or anything else for that matter, people can again just take another front end that uses the same data and gives them a less censored or less anywhere leaning option. And that kind of long-term the accountability for any Web3 platform. So as long as users have the control over their data, you can't become evil without losing that audience, because the switching costs are so much lower than they are in Web 2.
And I'd add two more aspects. So first one being kind of advertising, kind of being quite invasive, like tracking your GPS. Joonatan could go on hours on this topic because he was kind of seeing how this also just made on the Web 2 side. So I think that is an aspect where we can kind of give a more opt-in or less invasive experience and kind of just matchmake with perks and opportunities, or whether it's a product that you might be willing to buy. And I think the other interesting piece is the AI aspect. I guess even Elon Musk is considering OpenAI too evil. So he's vampire attacking now. That one, and there was some interesting discussions on Sunday here was AI day as well, Sentient, for example, which is kind of Polygon incubated, just raised 85 million. But a lot of interesting discussions as well on kind of training the AI models from the perspective that, Web3 can actually kind of validate real humans. And that's then like a more, useful data point for the AI models. I think the Llama 3 is now trained with 13 trillion so-called tokens. And that still has all the junk of the internet, and kind of the AI will have harder time to determine like what was actually, kind of good data versus bad. So I think like that's also where, both Fyrqvist and Phaver can kind of help in the future of kind of training the AI models from kind of the human verification perspective or data set.
Yeah, and conceivably with Web3's ownership model, individual users can maybe granularly decide to opt in their data to different model training programs, right? Like Twitter is the benefactor of all of the data created on their platform, right? And the users are not privy to that potential upside. Yeah, man. Guys, sign me up. You got me super excited about this, because I know I personally have felt this on social media platforms, on Twitter, but just and I feel like the algorithm has become more like just trying to farm engagement, less what I would consider like high quality, interesting posts. It just seems so kind of like lowest common denominator, and I would love an alternative algorithm to put over my Twitter feed. My God, I would love that right now, please. All right, good. So I want this future to happen now. Next question. So you guys started off with Lens Protocol and Farcaster. Those are your first two integrations. Can you tell me why you guys started with those? Or like, what's the process for integrating different platforms?
Yeah, so we kind of from the get-go, we decided that we start with our own sort of Web 2 social graph, which is still sort of the backbone of Phaver. So everything coming from the different applications and graphs all merges into one kind of off-chain feed on the Phaver side, so we can make it easy to access even if you don't have a wallet or understand anything about blockchain. But as kind of I mentioned earlier, we decided that the first thing we need to do is relinquish control over that. So being yet another Web 2 app that promises to someday be decentralized is not going to fly. I guess then the temptations might grow to farm, and greedy investors forbid us from decentralizing or whatever else happens 5 years down the road. So kind of on the side of that Web 2 social graph, we decided that, okay, we need at least one Web 3 graph, and we shouldn't build our own because, again, having a Web 3 graph that's only applicable to one app is the same as giving somebody a key, but you holding the only lock and being able to change it at any time. So like your social graph is not worth anything unless it's actually portable and interoperable between different apps. So then we started talking with the Aave team, who were back in the day working on Aave Social as a code name for Lens, and realized that this is actually exactly what we're looking for. And at that point, we were not aware of Farcaster or actually any of the other alternatives that were kind of in stealth mode being also built at the same time. And then for a while, we kept building on Lens only and monitoring kind of are there other kind of challengers coming, and then eventually realizing that Farcaster is starting to grow and becoming more and more interesting and more popular as well. And we'd been kind of from the get-go building for the multi-protocol, so it's been like fairly painless. Obviously, it's never easy merging multiple different social apps into one, but fairly painless to actually integrate all of them as they come. So now we're kind of focusing on those two as the main ones. And then with Animoca's Mochaverse and Mocha ID, we're also a core partner where you can connect your Mocha ID on Phaver, but they don't actually have like a social graph yet. So the integration is not as kind of robust as the full social graphs that Lens and Farcaster provide.
Yeah. Maybe just to add, CyberConnect was also initially building a social graph, and then they pivoted more kind of now doing a layer 2 on social. We're collabing with them as well to do small part of our airdrop via them. But it's been kind of an interesting landscape where, you monitor like, who's building the right type of infrastructure and where can we kind of put resources to provide kind of, and prioritizing from the kind of user experience perspective, like, thinking like what should our users get, or what's the most useful kind of reach and backup at the same time for them. So it's been also like an organic process, obviously, as we kind of predict like who's building what exactly in the future.
Cool. So I heard this mentioned earlier, Supergraph. You guys have a Supergraph. I'm assuming that this is some kind of like compilation of multiple graphs from these different protocols, or am I wrong in that?
Yeah, we had to give in and start adding some fancy marketing terms into our setup like everybody else in Web3 as well. But unlike most of them, like this actually has real utility for the user already. So what the Supergraph on Phaver means that when you make a post on Phaver, it reaches not only Phaver, but also all the users of Farcaster and Lens, whichever application they're on. And then the other way around, all of the engagement rolls up into one post. So if you made a Supergraph post on Phaver, you might be receiving one comment from Warpcast, then another one from Hey, and another one from Orb on Lens. And all of those are rolling up into the same post, and you can seamlessly respond to those. You can even make comments that go simultaneously to both Lens and Farcaster. And of course, at the same time, also to Phaver. And like our 200,000 weekly active users are able to see those even if they wouldn't be on Lens or Farcaster. We're still kind of more than half our users don't have those protocols enabled for them for any reason. So you kind of get that reach as well as part of that. So essentially kind of 3 in 1.
Very, very cool. I wonder, you feel free to answer this or not, but like, I wonder if you've got this, and whether people in the social community have had, because this seems like a similar debate between like L1s versus L2s, and if L2s are then going to like take away, what's it called? Take away value from the L1. Have there been any conversations about this kind of thing too, between Phaver and the other protocols that are integrated into it?
I think, yeah. Did you, Tomi, have?
No, I think like, it hasn't been like an active discussion. I think it's like an obvious thought that comes with it. Like, if you have a super graph, and especially when it's off chain, then kind of, there is the black box, same as like, layer 2 has the data essentially, and then they could kind of do something with it. That's at least what we've been saying, that, it's when the time is right, our plan would anyways to also kind of put as much of that on chain, whether it's, with the kind of our layer 1 partners or spinning up something different. But yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting point. But at this point, kind of, just focusing on the user experience, if we would on-chain all of that stuff, same as like, if L2 would all of a sudden put all the data back on chain, then it's not efficient again. So I think it's similar kind of philosophical battle. And yeah, but obviously kind of we're trying to keep the don't be evil aspect as much as we can and do it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think kind of the like L1, L2 metaphor, especially with Ethereum, is actually a pretty like relevant one here, where obviously Ethereum is like a very dominant blockchain on its own, but it could never really scale anywhere from its current limitations without the L2s and having a vibrant amount of L2s such as Base and Polygon. And the others on top of that is kind of 10 or 100xing the amount of innovation and building happening still on Ethereum, even if it's layer 2 below Ethereum, and kind of cementing the position of Ethereum. And like this week being at ECC, there's like a gazillion side events and everybody just kind of building around the fact that with the L2s and everything else, you can scale things where nowadays even L3s are becoming trendy, so you can kind of scale even further. But I think it's the same thing here. So kind of just having an L1 without anybody building on it is not going to be valuable. But if you're able to build an ecosystem where you have a lot of essentially social L2s below you, then that's going to be valuable. So in our case, if Lens or Farcaster becomes that dominant platform, we've been significantly helping them get there by onboarding new users, providing daily usage. And at the same time, we're also benefiting from it. So if they grow, we grow, and the other way around. And I think for a kind of very long time, there's aligned interests actually between the social graphs and the apps building on them, because we at least believe that actually majority of the monetization opportunities are happening on the front end level, or the kind of user experience level, where advertising and tokens and all the other monetization actually are more built towards that kind of application layer instead of the graph layer. So like we don't really see any reason to kind of forcefully try to on-chain the data on our end when we can actually enjoy the benefits of other partners who are building that component.
Very cool, yeah. All right, guys. So you have, I read that you've onboarded 380,000 monthly active users. That might be higher now. I don't know how old that data is. And I'm assuming this is primarily from the crypto community, right? Which I think this is a lot to me. I was surprised at this high of a number. How do you guys plan on onboarding more crypto users? And then more importantly, I would say, how do you plan on onboarding users outside of crypto?
Yeah, I think kind of the first step is still kind of we need to get crypto Twitter off Twitter, because without that, there's no hope for Web3 social if even the Web3 crowd is still stuck on Web2. And I think step by step, we're getting there. So kind of the real opinion leaders like Vitalik have been actively moving to Farcaster instead of using Twitter, and realizing that they get a much better discussion going with like-minded people instead of 20 MetaMask bots trying to scam people in their comments. So I think there's already more and more of that shift, and eventually we hit the critical mass of crypto discussion on Lens or Farcaster or Phaver being more relevant than that of Twitter or other Web2 channels. And after that, we can start focusing on kind of the more mainstream audience, because if you try to serve everybody at once, it's just going to dilute things to the point where nobody's going to be happy. We also see that kind of the strategy is going to be sort of like having two fairly different paths for different types of users. So if we try to have like Vitalik and my grandmother literally meet in the middle with technology, that's not going to be a great solution, where it's not going to be decentralized enough for Vitalik and it's going to be way too decentralized for my grandmother. So instead, we see that there has to be that easy user track where we help create a backed up wallet and don't have to educate people about how to store your seed phrase and all of these things that come with crypto today. And that's something that we're working on with Bastion, who is a custodial wallet provider. We're also like regulated in the US and other places to ensure that we can actually offer that sort of mainstream friendly experience, even to the point where you can pay your gas fees in in-app purchases instead of having to go to an exchange to buy to Matic in order to make a transaction of some sort. So trying to abstract away all the confusing parts, but at the same time, we still keep sort of the like enough decentralization where we see it that we are not the owners or controllers of the wallet. We are not the owners and controllers of the social graph. We are only the controllers of the app. And neither of these other things are fully tied to the application. So this means that even if we would decide to close somebody's access to Phaver, we wouldn't be closing their access to the wallet because we are not the owners of the wallet, and we wouldn't be closing access to their social graph. So this is kind of the minimum amount of decentralization where you get kind of majority of the sort of ethical and ownership benefits, but minimize the kind of friction for the user experience. So you don't have to educate the grandmothers about the blockchain, and you can just offer them a Web2 friendly experience. And then the other track is if you really want to have that sort of more decentralized, full custodial experience, then you connect your own wallet, you mint everything into your own wallet, you pay your own gas fees, and do what the degens do. But then the innovative part is that both of these experiences need to be seamlessly living on the same graph and kind of the same experience. So it doesn't really matter whether somebody uses their custodial wallet inside the app or they use their MetaMask or their ledger for a transaction. The end result is the same as the user experience, and how you kind of got there is just different.
Yeah. And I had one more point on kind of the, like, how to scale the user base and like what are we kind of currently working on the flywheel impact. So, and I think this is the cool native thing about, building, in Web3 and with tokens is that, the incentives, for example, we are our creator program, and it's amazing to see how much they are just, raving about us and, being somewhere with Phaver hoodies and, kind of onboarding people even kind of, by hand and the same with like, ambassador program and our contributors who essentially was our like Discord group who were translating everything into different languages. So I think that's an interesting piece where, kind of instead of, I think when you're building in Web3, it's more like building a village instead of building a company. So I think like that's one of the key aspects, like, how you can actually kind of layer by layer get people also off, crypto Twitter first. And then I think especially when the token is live and we have a bit more like tangible rewards, then kind of attract the mainstream creators as well and kind of try to bring that same flywheel impact there. So in the end, it's more about, financially, it's about, also providing more fair revenue share. Facebook has 100 billion revenue and 1 billion creator program. YouTube, you can get 50-50 rep share if you are like top 0.5% creator or whatever. So I think it's also like flipping the kind of, take rate essentially around. And I think that's just going to happen gradually. And it needs the kind of community to be kind of spreading the message.
Yeah, totally. No, that was great. Just two comments, and then I have one last question. The first one is, I think in general, I'm just going to say, Joonatan, sorry. My apologies. I think in general, the solution that you're taking is probably the right way for not just for a social crypto company, but for most. The idea that my mom is going to buy Bitcoin and then keep it non-custodially is insane. It'll never happen. And we have to have, like you said, just like a spectrum where you have a custodial company, but it's not you, and the social graph is not controlled by you. But then it slides all the way to the other side where you can do what I do, or I'm sure you guys do, and that I think is a great solution. Both pragmatic, it keeps both the pragmatic side and the kind of the idealistic side. So kudos to that. And then Tomi, to what you were saying about these incentivizations and kind of these knobs and switches that you can push and pull. Yeah, totally. And Ace in the interview, outside of the interview, he was showing me some of the kind of gamification reward systems that you guys have in place and some of the action and behaviors. that he's helping onboarding people with. And it seems to work really well. And it seems like once you talk to kind of creators and influencers, they really understand it right away, and they understand the benefit over the Web2 companies who quite frankly kind of take most of the gains in that. So I don't know if you guys want to comment on anything I just said, and then I have one last question.
Yeah, I think kind of on what you mentioned, sort of Coinbase is, I think, a pretty good example of that happening on sort of the like finance side of crypto, where you don't have to understand the complexities of stuff to go and buy your Dogecoin or your Bitcoin with just your credit card or your bank account. But then at the same time, it allows you to transfer those crypto out into a self-custodial wallet and do whatever you want with them. So that's sort of, I think, a similar metaphor on the financial side. And we're trying to ensure that we have sort of that easy experience for everyone. But at the same time, there's sort of the option to take more control of your path if you want to. And in general, it's only going to be worth it for a small share of the users. So either those who live in countries where they have to fear for their freedom of speech or being blocked or censored for example, political views. And then those who have more to lose. So if you actually have a lot of audience, then you want to make sure that nobody else is in control of your audience. But if you are kind of an average user, your likelihood of being kind of wrongfully removed from the platforms is, of course, a bit smaller. It still exists. The same grandmother who's now a Phaver influencer actually got the deplatformed from Facebook for accidentally changing her age to 13, trying to hide her birthday. So like that can happen. You don't have to be a full degen to be able to be kicked out of the Web2 apps.
Yeah. I think maybe one more anecdote just on the kind of, what the reward and gamification mechanism has also been kind of brewing up. I think one nice thing is that kind of the social consensus is rewarding kind of also like, genuine art or like something that, created like a coolest meme about, the Phaver community or Web3 social or something. To be honest, we've had like our faces also on like every single permutation of the memes, which is not maybe the most useful part of it, but that has also happened at the same time. But I think it's like, it's also, and I'm glad that, it's not only like, how do I engagement farm and what you see in Twitter as well, like, some crazy video, which can be like, very like negative energy or whatever. I think here it's still being like kind of the financial part has not taken over the engagement farming, but it's more like, I get like this social reward. And then I also have like the extra financial incentive essentially to it. And it's been kind of interesting to see the creators, like some of them were like early on Degen and Bonsai. So they're also kind of like very like new type of internet native creators kind of figuring out like, where should I be actually, an influencer and creator, because you get the financial benefit, but you're also kind of, building up and have the chance to actually be like one of the kind of OG big influencers there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. So my last question is about moderation. I know this is something that I have seen up close and personal with Reddit. I was part of Dig when they had their kind of moderation snafu, and then everything moved to Reddit, and then kind of Reddit turned into a terrible experience, and I feel like kind of a wasteland now, largely due to moderation. And then Twitter, of course, has had so many public battles and still struggles with moderation. It seems to be quite a difficult thing, and I don't think there are any like definitive answers on how to handle this. I'm wondering if you guys have thought about this and what you're thinking of doing.
Yeah, that's obviously like one of the things where there's no right answer, because a lot of that is very nuanced around kind of what should be allowed and what should not be allowed. And kind of overall kind of there's also this sort of misconception where like Web3 means absolute freedom of censorship. And that's not through, like, if you want to see absolute freedom of censorship, you get a Tor browser, you go on the dark web, and you see people trading children and drugs. And like, that's freedom of censorship. And that's not where anybody wants to really go, and not where you can legally go either. So the app stores have their own policies. The kind of every, at least Western government, has strict policies on certain things not being allowed. And kind of there always has to be a certain level of moderation, and no matter what you do, in order to, like, just function. Also, the amount of spam is obviously overwhelming in any sort of application. So you kind of have to have a certain level of moderation. And then I think where, again, Web3 can make a difference is that accountability. So as we saw with a lot of things such as, like, Trump being deplatformed, kind of whether anybody thinks it's right or wrong, that is obviously, like, a debatable topic where people are willing to debate that for a long time very aggressively. But what is kind of clear is that Twitter was able to do that decision on their own and kind of deplatform a president of the country with essentially one click. And YouTube is able to deplatform everybody they disagree with. So is Facebook. And that kind of, like, you have no accountability over it because you have that absolute control of every single part of that kind of chain, from the social graph all the way to the moderation. And with Web3, it means that for us, the kind of metaphor we use a lot is a nightclub. So instead of the old model where kind of in the Web2 world, you only have one nightclub in the entire city, and if you get banned from it, you can't see your friends anywhere. But the Web3 option is the one where the city has multiple nightclubs, and each one of them is kind of choosing their own clientele. That means that, like, if you want the dodgiest people to be roaming free, then you don't have a bouncer and nobody's going to be kicked out. And probably most people don't want to be there because it's going to be dodgy and somebody pukes all over you. And then on the other hand, you're going to have places where you have a very strict door policy, and then you have people in between that. And I think Web3 social is going to be a very similar situation where, since there will be multiple different front ends with different types of moderation, that also means that those who, for example, want to be in a fully safe space, they can choose one version of the same social graph. Those who hate censorship in all of its forms find another one that's going to be kind of more of that dodgy version, but they get to make their own decisions. And again, in between that, so I think that's going to be, like, one of the key things where people can have different experiences around it. Then for the kind of baseline user experience, I think one of the most interesting parts is that right now, the whole X to earn model in Web3 is almost entirely farm to earn, no matter kind of what the moniker around it is. So how do we actually take all of those people who are sleep to earning, or play to earning, or run to earning, or tap to earning, as the most recent trend seems to be? How do we get people to actually do something useful and earn kind of token rewards for benefiting? And I think that's where a lot of the moderation actually can come from, that sort of long tail of the community. So we haven't rolled out all the functionalities yet because the amount of traffic we have is not so big that we can't handle it with our internal team. But the idea is that some things, such as whether this is spam or not, can be differentiated quite easily by almost anyone. And then gamifying that, having a certain consensus mechanism there, so you cannot just blindly swipe everything to the left and decide everything is spam. Then like, it should be possible to actually get that sort of farming to be part of the moderation. And then there's obviously those sort of Reddit mod type folks who are really committed to it and really want to be kind of focusing on highlighting the best content. So again, how do we identify who those people are and reward them for their contributions? We can actually get people who can then be full-time moderators and won't be just paid in karma, but can actually get token rewards out of that. So kind of ideologically it's about the accountability, but in practice, I think the financial incentives can be geared in a way where we get a much better end user experience by utilizing the parts of the community who want to be earning and kind of putting them to work on something that's not just tapping a hamster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I should have said that. Just that I have tried all of the other Reddit alternatives that were promise no moderation, free moderation, say whatever you want, and they're far worse than Reddit, right? Like, I mean, the most unproductive, terrible, childish conversations. It's just, yeah, obviously you want moderation, but it's it's kind of like Goldilocks, right? Not too hot, not too cold. How do you do it? And I like your answer. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. We've gone over the time, and I appreciate the extra time you've given me. Thank you very much for this interview. Do you have any last words?
Well, thanks as well. It was a very good discussion, and I guess as last words, remember to get Phaver as well, and we'll get you onboarded with blue ticks and stuff. So